Hey folks, welcome to More Than a Refresh, the T3D sessions. We are continuing today with Postgres Pet Peeves. We have Brian. Brian, talk to us. Make us feel like our worlds would be better if the Postgres community fixed this first world problem.
One of the big pet peeves that I've found out actually kind of recently is when you are adding a new column and give it a default value. Postgres actually likes to do a little trickery in the back end, so it does it really quickly, but it can end up actually destroying your performance on that table, especially if you're trying to use that new column in a where clause.
Oh,
So
now I don't know this. I mean, I assumed if you gave it a default value, I think it used to be, and it's been a long time. It used to be you'd add the default value, but it would only apply to the new rows, or it would lock the table and rewrite it.
I believe the old practice was to lock the table and rewrite it.
And
So now it no longer does that, and it gives it kind of a by this transaction ID, assume that those rows have this default value. They're not actually on disk, so it makes the actual statement to say add the column much quicker, but then the statistics planner are way off. So then when you try to start querying that table and say where this column equals something, the statistics have no idea what's in there. And
okay, this is interesting to me because I see multiple problems here. One, if it's as of this XID, that's going to be invisible to
Mhm.
other open transactions.
Possible. I mean, the statement still has to have a minor lock to actually do the addition of the column. So
Right.
anything open before that won't even see the column, but it doesn't sit there and rewrite the table. So that
Right, which
column
I'm
is empty.
yeah, and that's good that it doesn't rewrite the table. Not that it's, I mean, I almost wonder, I don't know. So now you said if you use a where clause, so the statistics are off. So so you rewrite, you add default, but then I assume you also index that column, right? Otherwise, you're
I mean, you can. I mean, it's not guaranteed.
well, sure, but the where clause. This is interesting to me. I haven't thought about this, and so I'm just kind of digging into it with you. I get the fact that the statistics are not updated because we got to wait for auto analyze to run.
Right.
Um,
Well, even with
but
the analyze and everything on disk, those rows have no values. They're just kind of these fake assumed values.
oh, so it's like a virtual column.
Sorts, and any row that does get rewritten, like if I update another column, that new row will have on disk that new value, that default value. That is correct. So eventually the table will adhere to actually having that data, but in the
S-
initial state, it does not.
So I'm almost starting to think that you may have found like a corner case bug for the feature.
I don't think it's a bug. I think it was a decision in Postgres 11 to introduce this because people were complaining that adding a column with a default value was causing so much lockage.
Sure,
So,
and I get that point, but I'm talking about if it's not on disk, it doesn't actually exist for the
mhm,
planner, right? That's the problem we're actually talking about. They
right.
solved part of the problem. The second part of the problem is how does it get effectively used? Well, if it's only new data, and especially if it's a table that's not written that often, or
Mhm.
does vacuum come behind it? Like it does, if vacuum comes by, will it populate? Will it check and say, "Hey, this has got this virtual value. We need to populate it."
Vacuum, I don't believe so, but vacuum full will. Anything that rebuilds the table will.
So cluster reindex and vacuum full.
Yeah,
S-
they
s-
should take care of that.
Yeah, so that suggests to me that we it's a behavioral bug because at this point, if let's say I got 100 million row table, we obviously don't want it to lock.
Yep.
We add a column with a default, let's say gender. I don't, and that's a bad name. Let's say birth date. But we needed to have a value, so it's got a default like the old school ways where your default was like January 1st, 1970 or 1900 or whatever. That's how they used to do it.
Yep.
Um, and then you don't have that many users, so you've got a table with and you say let's say you add 50 users, and that's the only thing you add in the month, if it's something a process doesn't come through and update those virtual rows, the planner is going to be wonky pulling data.
If the planner is trying to use that column as a conditional, yeah, it will not know what's in there. And
And
that's I
it's
saw that firsthand in an actual client. And queries that were initially super quick suddenly were terrible. And we tracked it down to this issue.
yeah, and that's why I'm saying I think it is a bug. Or maybe so I got into this argument uh, many moons ago that sometimes it's a bug and sometimes it's an oversight.
Hmm.
So maybe it's an oversight, but if this is all the way back to 11, we've had almost a decade of this should have been fixed. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a PostgreSQL core hacker, you know, anymore or ever, frankly, but I used to know a lot more about it. But it seems to me the way that it would go through this is that per the alter table, the table would be flagged as having a virtual default column so that when auto vacuum or vacuum, either one is called, it would scroll through and it would do like a two pass, right? The first one's the update because it updates that column with the physical write on disk. And then it would do a secondary pass to actually clean up the dead rows from the update. Right. I
Yeah,
can't think of any other way that it could be done without locking.
right. And again, I think it's just the reason why it's a pet peeve for me is because there is an assumption of there is no data on disk, but there's a mechanism that says assume that this value equals this. And to me, I hate that because it's like, well, if the data's not actually there, then it's not there.
Well, I agree. It goes back to my largest pet peeve from 8.3,
Hmm.
when they went from floating point to integer based timestamps. Right. And actually not even that one. The more implied problem was the implicit casting, right? Do you remember that one?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's where you could add a string in an integer and it would figure out that it's math.
Hmm.
It did all kinds of wonky stuff, just like you're talking about, unintended consequences of a fix.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to post to hackers the exact because I'd be honestly, in defense of them, they probably didn't think about this as a real world thing, and we've only run into it once.
Personally, yeah, just one time, just recently.
Yeah, but the question is, how many times did we run into it without knowing it?
Very true. And
Right?
it's funny too because the fix, quote unquote, to get these queries running quicker is completely counterintuitive. What we did is we did an update on the entire table. It was probably, a couple hundred gigs, updating that row to equal the value that actually was, which literally doubled our dead space and the bloat and everything, and it improved queries.
Yeah, it would because then you've got the proper statistics and obviously the data's on
Yeah.
disk. But you're right; it's going to bloat the table out,
Yeah.
and
So
and
then we had another
then
problem.
And then the other problem is, how do we deal with the bloat, right? Well, we have to rewrite the table. And so it just turns into this cascading thing because no matter what, we can either rewrite the table the old fashioned way and lock it up, right? Vacuum full or something like that. Or you do the whole create table as select into all in a single transaction, right? And push it all around. But either way, you get those are not ideal.
No. I think another way would be to update those rows, but in batches, like maybe 5% of the table at a time, let vacuum take care of it. So then your bloat is minimal, but then now your maintenance just to add a column is more than just a statement.
Yeah,
It's a
it
pain
no
in the butt.
longer becomes, oh, we simply just add a column. It's
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you, you should write this up. This should be a blog or white paper / case study. It absolutely it's one of those corner cases that only people like us are gonna run into.
Hmm.
And you should write it up.
Yeah. And I'll make sure that I'm correct on the thought that vacuum doesn't actually write it.
That would
But
be good.
yeah, but I just know that in our specific case with the client, it was days of poor performance and then a stupid update statement fixed it. So
Yeah, no. All right, folks. Well, this has been another T3D Sessions Postgres Pet Peeves. Thank you, Brian.